Hi everyone and welcome. Today we're taking a look at angles. We're going to have a look at what an angle is, have a look at some names for different types of angles, and then we'll have a practical demonstration of how we measure angles using a protractor. I hope you find it useful. So what's an angle? Well, you may be familiar with measuring distance, and for that we tend to use a ruler or tape measure or something similar, and we start at 0 and we measure along a line or a distance to find out how big it is. Now, an angle measures how much something has turned around from pointing in one direction to turning and pointing in another. And rather than measuring in a straight line, we measure using a protractor. And we start in just the same way at 0 and we measure how much something has turned. And rather than using millimeters, we use degrees. Let's look at that more closely. Imagine in this diagram here that you are stood at the point here at the bottom of the line and you are looking straight along that line there. Then you decide to turn round, and you turn round until you are looking not straight along that line but along this line here. So you have moved round and you are looking in a different direction. The angle that you have turned through is this angle here, and this is what we would measure using a protractor to work out how many degrees you have turned. Before we start to have a look at how we measure angles with the protractor, I want to have a look at some very common angles. In each of these 4 cases, we are going to start by standing at the bottom of the line here, looking straight up. Now, in this first example, what we are doing is moving from here, turning round, and in fact what we are going to do is turn all the way round until we are back where we started. Now that means we've turned round a whole circle. In a circle there are 360 degrees. So a full turn round means you have turned 360 degrees. Based on that, we can work out one or two others. In this second example here, we are starting looking straight up, but when we have finished, we are going to be looking in this direction. So in fact, what we have done is turned a quarter of a turn. In this case, quarter of 360 is 90 degrees. And in fact, that is what we call a right angle. It's 90 degrees. The one on the bottom left here, again we are starting looking straight up, but by the time we have turned we end up looking in exactly the opposite direction. We are looking straight down. Therefore we have made half a turn. And of course a half of 360 is 180 degrees. The fourth one then, similar idea. We are starting looking straight up. By the time we have turned round, we are now looking in this direction. And because we turned round starting here, what we have done is made a 3/4 turn. 3/4 of 360 degrees is 270 degrees. These are very common angles and well worth remembering. They are simply a quarter, a half, and 3/4 of 360. The 4 examples I gave on the previous page all started with us looking in the same direction, straight up. Of course, that doesn't have to be the case. It could be that you have a line that is pointing in that direction and the turn is made so that it ends up pointing in this direction, and the angle therefore is the angle between the 2 lines there. So you can start in any direction. It's also worth mentioning that it could be a situation where you actually start with a line that is in that direction and ends up in this direction, and in fact what you have done is turned in the opposite direction, anti-clockwise. Therefore the angle of turn would be this angle here. So an angle is between any two lines pointing in different directions, starting from the same point. There are 4 different names for angles that we really need to learn. I mentioned this one earlier, so I'm going to start with it. It is an angle that's exactly 90 degrees, and we call it the right angle. You will notice that whereas all the other angles have curves, where I've drawn the angle, this one has a square box. It's an angle that we use quite a lot, and the box helps us to recognize it easily. Now, a smaller angle, one that is less than 90, so it's between 0 and 90 degrees, we call this an acute angle. If an angle gets larger and is larger than a right angle, so it's more than 90 degrees, but it's less than a half turn, it's less than 180, this one has got the name obtuse. And if an angle gets larger than a half turn, so it's larger than 180, but it isn't a full circle, we call this the reflex angle. So let's have a look at exactly how we would use the protractor to measure an angle. We are going to look at this angle here. Take a look at the protractor. I'll just move it up here. You can see that the numbers go from 0 and count round 10, 20, 30, 40 that way. But also, if you look closely, there is a 0 on this side as well. And these inside set of numbers go 10, 20, 30, 40 in the opposite direction. This allows us to use the protractor to measure either a clockwise angle or an anti-clockwise, but you have to be careful to make sure you know which scale it is you are using. The first thing we need to do is put the protractor in the right place. Now, if you have a look at the 2 zeros, they are both on this line here. And in fact, it is not the edge of the protractor we use, it is this cross in the center there that we use as the center of our measuring. So it is that cross that needs to be placed exactly on the point of the angle like that. Once you have done that, you need to rotate the protractor so that your 0 is exactly on the first line. As you can see, it is there. We have 0 on the line. From there, we can now measure around the angle. So we count along this way, and we can see from the second line that this particular angle is 50 degrees. Now, just to show how it works the other way around, if I turn this protractor so that the other 0 on the other end is covering that line as it is now, because we are starting with this 0, we measure on the inside line, and of course again we can see that this line is on the 50 degrees mark. So the angle is 50 degrees, we can measure it in either direction, and when you're measuring an angle, it's up to you which way around you go. And that is angles for the moment. There are quite a few things in there that you just need to memorize, really. I think if you try to commit to memory that a full circle is 360 degrees, a right angle is 90, and also learn the names of the angles depending on their sizes, you are making a good start to understanding the topic. So I hope that's some help for you when you come across questions about angles. If you want to take things a little bit further, there is the topic of bearings, a similar topic but with its own rules. And of course, I do have another video covering that, which is on the screen now. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you.